Mike Loico. Okay, and Councilmember Sean Parker. Okay, nevertheless, we do have a quorum, so we're going to continue with today's meeting. And I'd like to turn the proceedings over to the city.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. This is our rescheduled meeting at the Metropolitan Trailer Road. Taking the Sunlight in the Howard office. Today is the 3rd. Noted that also the test is presented to the board, and the board will could be at a date by the show hearing before the board. Submit all cases filed in order, all held and notified, certified, and all notice returns have filled. Any other cases here?
Very call first case for today, which is SR 2020-009. Caitlin, please step forward. Nice claim, but we're here first from the state. As you may have heard, our microphones are functioning today. When it is your turn to speak, and thank you for wearing a mask, but we'll need to project so that we can all hear. Thank you so much.
And one additional item. Is there anyone here in support of this case? Is there anybody here in opposition to this case? Seeing none, I'll hear from Mr. Speaker. On November 4th of 2019, an R5 short railroad was issued. There were 5 website advertisements
December, as I'm hearing. I haven't been able to rent it out since last October, which has affected me financially. I'm knowledgeable of the requirements now and am more than happy to do whatever I need to do to comply with the protocol in place by Metro Codes. I'm just asking to not have to wait a full calendar year to reapply. I'd like to be able to do that as soon as possible because I'm losing money the longer I have to wait, and it's been a rough year. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Clampett. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to pose to the appellant for clarification?
I do want to actually point out that there is a letter in our packets.
Yes.
From someone who appears to be a neighbor of yours, the last name Wofford.
It's someone also on North Fifth. Yeah. It's not about your property in particular, but it's just expressing concern that that neighborhood has been heavily populated by STRs. And
it actually does reference the rental specifically.
Okay.
And says to quote it, I believe our street and area is getting saturated with short-term rentals. Additionally, it does not appear this property is well cared for. There's a lot of clutter, and I'm concerned this will get worse and hurt our property values. Do you have any response to that?
Do I have a response to it?
Yes.
I'm not renting it out a ton, or I wasn't. It was just here and there, sparingly when I wasn't there. I was traveling, so I never had any communication from any of my neighbors, most of which I'm close with, and we have, doggy play dates and whatnot. I haven't heard anything or had any communication, so I'm happy to, do what I need to do and act in integrity for the neighborhood. But I don't believe that me operating this poses any threat.
I'd just like to clarify, you went through the usual processes to obtain your permit.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm pretty sure, we've seen them, it states quite frankly on the application that it's a one-year permit. Does it not?
I don't remember, honestly, because I haven't seen it in a while, because I haven't had it. So I don't remember seeing that, and I do, I was under the impression that I would receive something telling me when I would need to do that, and this is my first go at this, so I'm learning.
Right. It isn't, why were you under the impression that you would get an alert? That hasn't been something that we've understood to be standard.
I remember hearing it when I first got my permit to some capacity, but honestly, it was a while ago, so I don't remember entirely who told me. But I do remember being under that impression.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. If there are no questions from the board to the appellant, and the appellant has shared with us all that she has to share, let's close the public hearing and see if there's any discussion to be had among board members. So the public hearing is now closed.
I'm looking at this case, and I think I look back at some of the other cases that we've taken on, and this is her first permit. Her permit expired at the height of COVID. We've had other instances where people who have had permits have received notifications in the mail in their first year, and in this case, did not. So
I don't recall anyone having been given the notification that their permit was expiring.
they would receive a letter in the mail. We had a couple cases in our first session.
First session?
Yeah, they have. It's a courtesy.
It's a courtesy, yes. It's not a requirement. It hasn't happened consistently. But it has been a courtesy. And so I think in this case, given Ms. Clempett's explanation to us, I think there's probably a little bit of grace that we can provide in this case. But I'm open to other discussion.
I was going to suggest 1 year period running from October, which is the last document say.
Sounds pretty reasonable.
I think 1 year's a little harsh when she's up for renewal.
wouldn't be until December 15th.
No, it wouldn't.
When the application is made for renewal, that's when the 1 year starts. So December 15th would be her first date of eligibility if we wanted to take any action or provide any relief.
So you're providing October? I think there's, what,
I mean, I understand what you're saying, Bill, but it might seem a little harsh. At the same time, they're required to have their permits on their ads, which the ads seem to have been actively reviewed. They were taken up, they were taken down, put on different platforms. And, one would have to look at your permit in order to get the number to post it if you were compliant, or would have to post a picture of the permit, which would have the expiration date right on it. So I get that people make mistakes, but that's why we have.
For point of clarification, I believe at some point the expiration date stopped being printed on the permits. Or there was discussion, I believe, maybe in our first meeting about if all the permits still have the expiration dates printed on them. And I'd like to get some clarification on that.
Can we get some clarification from the city as to whether or not the permits still indeed have the expiration date printed on them?
Or
I thought that we determined at a subsequent meeting that they did.
Or at least as to one
As
that
to
would have
this
been
one.
issued on May 24th, 2019.
Do we have a screenshot of the permit from the ad?
See, we do not.
So I think the impression is that typically the issuance date is listed with the 1 year expiration implied.
Okay.
So whatever the issuance
Implied
date
or
is.
listed?
I'm sorry, there's a
No.
correction that I'm sorry to interrupt. It does show now that both the issue date and the expiration date is shown
On this one.
This is an example.
So in at least the example, both issuance date and expiration date are both listed, but this is not the one in this case.
I don't think that answers the question in this particular case.
Right, we're looking to see if we have that. That's just simply an example we pulled from a previous.
Okay.
Ron, do you have anything about?
Well, I agree. I think we need a little leniency here, but October seems a little harsh, but
How about September 1st? Still in the strike zone, but it also opens up Ms. Plankton's property for kind of a hot time in Nashville, which I'm sure she would enjoy being able to rent the property during that fall season.
If I could just add this, even though if we are in an instance where only the issuance date is listed, the code does specifically lay out 365 days
Right.
per expiration. So there is, at least in that instance, what the law requires.
Right, we just want to know what's on the face of the permit
Yeah.
itself.
Okay.
I don't necessarily charge, maybe I shouldn't say this. I don't necessarily charge permit holders with specific knowledge of the code. However, there are certain
Right.
things I expect to be on the face of the document. I know for licensed attorneys and most other professions that are licensed in the state of Tennessee, your expiration date is provided. Or any other person, has a privilege, privilege protected by law. The privilege expires, is what it tells you.
So how would you feel about September 1st as opposed to October?
Okay.
Okay.
Can we reopen the public hearing and ask her if she has a copy of her permit?
Sure.
Maybe.
Let's consider the public hearing reopened so that Ms. Kimmerling can pose a few questions to the appellant.
Ms. Clampett, do you have a copy of your permit itself?
I don't have it on me. I'm sure I can find it zipped through emails of some sort, but I don't have a paper copy with me.
Are you aware whether or not your permit has the expiration date written on
I'm
the face?
not aware. I don't think that it does, which is, it might be why this happened, so.
You don't have a or you don't have a picture of it perhaps on your phone that you were using to post since that was required?
I know I have it. It would just take me a second to find it.
We only got 2 cases. We can.
Okay.
I also have one other question before we get started on
Yeah.
that. So the cancellation, so you sent renewal documentation on your own accord, according to this, on December 15th, 2020, or that was when it was received here. What caused you to do that?
I think I had I had a fellow friend who I talked to, and they were like, "Oh, when did yours expire?" And then I was like, "Oh, I'm not sure."
Thank you. Do you want to look for that?
Yeah,
sure.
appreciate
Grab my
it.
phone.
Some of the I've gotten quite a bit myself.
You know that the public records now you're complaining about the resources.
August 1st. August 1st.
Do I hear December 15th?
No.
Phil's down there auctioning dates.
I'm looking, and I have building permits, but I can't find the rental.
So this permit was issued to you on May 24th, 2019. I'm just going to confer here with the city to just confirm that it would be highly unlikely that a permit issued in May of 2019 would lack the expiration date or would lack the issue date with some language stating that it was a 1-year permit or a 365-day permit, right? It's not like there's been a material change in how these permits are printed up.
That's, I think, what we're trying to confirm
Okay.
right now.
Oh,
I know that there was a change made on the labyrinth, but I can't be certain about
Okay.
the actual time frame.
got it.
We're having issues with connectability.
Oh,
Yes.
the gremlins are at work today.
Mercury's still in retrograde. Tuck your shoes down.
No luck?
Nothing.
Okay. We're going to give the city a few more minutes to see if we can answer this burning question. All this time we've been waiting for connection?
Yes.
Okay. Does that mean that we may be able to see Ms. Clampett's actual permit?
That's my opinion.
That we're, okay,
I think we're trying to find a picture of the permit itself.
super.
Yeah.
Ground lines.
Nope, still not.
Everyone's so uncomfortable with silence.
Yeah, that's true.
It's fine.
Silence is actually good occasionally.
People are like plugging in Ethernet cables over there, so I think maybe.
Is your screen not working?
It was black before. Well, now it's just gobbling up.
It is?
Mine is.
All of ours are.
Oh, here we go.
Okay. Oh, yeah, this one's actually.
Back to this well. Glad I got my contacts today.
Brilliant. Application date, issue date. Permit expires 1 year from date of issuance unless renewed.
Yeah, and it's in pretty bold.
In bold text. So, well, that does answer that question. Okay. Very good. Well, okay, we've seen it. And it, actually, the placard that would have been sent to you, that you would have had, as you just saw, that actually, rather than having the date implied to you with the bold lettering, it had the expiration date on it. But nevertheless, we think we've beaten that horse to death. So I'm going to close the public hearing, and we're going to
September. Okay.
September.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So I will make a motion. No, we don't have to do that. Nope. So we're going to move that Ms. Clampett be permitted to reapply on September 1st rather than December 15th. Do I have a second? Very good. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand.
All right.
Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Clampett. Have a nice day.
Could you please repeat the date? That was,
Oh, September 1st of 2021.
thank you.
Yep. Okay.
And our final consideration for the day is
Case,
SPR 2001-0011. Mr. Clifton Sane, appellant and owner of property located at 128 Fern Avenue, seeks permission to apply for a permit earlier than the law allows. The appellant operated after a short
Point of clarification here, do I ask those in opposition to join or wait until?
No, we'll wait.
Okay.
We'll wait.
Okay, very good. Okay, so let's hear first from the city, and then are we pronouncing your name correctly?
It's saying.
Sane.
Yeah,
Very good,
yeah.
thank you. And then we'll turn to Mr. Sane after we've heard from the city.
On November 4th, 2016, the non-owner occupied SDLC permit was issued. On November 13th of 2016, the Airbnb ad was posted. April the 8th, 2017, a VRBO ad was posted. September 13th of 2018, the permit was renewed, and again on November 21st of 2019. March 17th, 2019, the VRBO ad was removed. On November 4th of 2020, the permit expired. April 2021, payment received by the Code Department approximately 5 months after the permit expired. Without the required affidavit, the appellant was contacted. April of 2021 is the last document stay. April 28th, 2021, the appeal was filed. On June 16th of 2021, the Airbnb advertisement remains posted as of June 16th, which I checked again today, and it still remains posted. The calendar is blocked through October the 30th of 2021. There are 2 document stays after the permit expired, March of 2021 and April of 2021. There are no documented stays after the appeal was filed. There are no documented complaints against the property in either Metro Hub or with host compliance hotline.
Very good, thank you. Okay, so Mr. Sane,
Yes.
give me 1 second. Gentlemen, is it 10 minutes for Mr. Sane to present?
Present
Or is it
and rebuttal, too, if he wishes to save any rebuttal.
to save any rebuttal time? Perfect, okay. Want to make sure I knew what I was doing. Okay, Mr. Sane, tell us about your case.
Yeah, so I, started doing my Airbnb just to supplement my mortgage. And then last year, given COVID, I had some, it was rented out as of March, and then I had a lot of cancellations as everybody probably has. So at that time, given the COVID climate, I wasn't even comfortable about letting people stay in my house because I live there. So I didn't want people to come in and potentially affect me with, with the COVID disease. So I didn't even think that even the latter part of last year that I was going to even rent it out in 2021. Because again, I was just fearful of COVID, and the vaccine rollout hadn't occurred last year. It was just this year. So then when I realized that I needed to renew my license, and I just completely forgot about renewing my license, to be quite honest. In hindsight, had I known that I had a 30-day grace period after my permit had expired, that I was gonna, that I would have to go through this process, I would have done it pretty much at that time. But then when I went to try to renew my license, I was told that I had to, go through this process to do an appeal, etc. And so my listing is still up, but I have blocked my calendar because that's what I was advised to do. I didn't realize that I had to completely take down my listing, but I have blocked off my calendar until like October, so that no one can rent it out.
Okay. That's you're done? Because I want to stop the clock so that you'll have time to rebut the opposition. And I'm sure a lot of us have questions. Go right ahead, Ron.
Did you say you live there?
I do live there, yes. Yes, so I had an owner-occupied permit because I got it, I think it was like maybe 2016.
You got a not owner-occupied?
Not owner-occupied, yes. I got it in 2016, so yes, I live there at the property, which is the reason why I only rent it out like twice a month, if that. So, yeah.
I'm curious as to why you entertain a not owner-occupied permit if you do live at the residence.
Well, so I actually think it is an owner-occupied license that I got in 2016 because that's the one where if you live there, then you can, you can legally, operate a short-term rental without, without it being specifically zoned as a short-term rental area, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think we're talking past each other. You lived there in 2016, but
Yes.
nevertheless, you went for a non-owner occupied, as though you didn't live in the property.
No. It was an owner occupied.
Okay, well, maybe we have a misprint here, but originally, we were.
I'm checking this permit. It's a non-owner occupied permit.
Okay.
That's the permit.
Well-
In 2016.
Okay, so you actually had a permit that was intended for a different kind of use, but I think there's nothing in the non-owner occupied permit that precludes you from living in the property. So that's neither here nor there. So that seems to have been issued by mistake, right? I guess my first question is, you've had it since 2016. You had a pretty good track record of renewing each year.
Yes.
And yet,
Yes.
2020 came and went.
Yes, I mean, again, like I said, the reason why I didn't renew, because again, I didn't know what the COVID climate situation was going to be.
Sure.
So that is my sole purpose of again, it was just, I didn't know in 2021 that, things were going to be uplifted. So I just didn't take the, initiative to get it renewed because again, I just didn't know what the COVID climate was going to do.
Right, but you took the initiative to rent it this spring.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, yes.
4 years in a row, knew
Yes.
you had an expiration and actively renewed. And then last year, I get it, we were all involved in the pandemic. You weren't going to rent it. You thought maybe it's not safe, so you didn't bother getting renewal, but you did bother renting it.
Yes. So absolutely, and again, and that was just my mistake, my error, because again, I just completely forgot to go through the renewal process. So that was just a complete honest mistake. Again, had I had to do all over again, of course, I would have, took the initiative to renew it when I was supposed to have renewed it.
Can I also ask who advised you to block your calendar? Because I was looking actually to see what your notice was that was sent to you, because advertising a short-term rental when you have no permit, that in and of itself is a violation. So blocking your calendar doesn't erase that. Had you changed it to, I believe, a 31-day rental, I think that might have given you some cover. But
Okay.
who advised you?
I think it was, I forget his name, David somebody, I can't remember his name, but I called just to make sure that, so when he called me, or I called him, I can't remember how it went, but I was just told to literally just block off my calendar. I mean, I didn't realize that I had to take the listing down.
I'm looking for a copy of the. Okay, and I may want to get a little more into that too, but then can I ask what these, we have a few emails here about a sidewalk waiver request related to this case?
Unclear as to how that related to, it appears to be from the property.
Oh, it does?
Yes.
Okay, so maybe that's just attached here in error. Okay. Okay, well, luckily we don't have to get into that then. I'm going to look at what the notice says. But anyone else who has questions, please go right ahead. I don't want to continue to monopolize the conversation. Okay, I'm back to monopolizing the conversation. I'm looking at the young woman that appeared before you, Ms. Clamp, and I'm looking at her letter, which is a standard letter. And it says, all short-term rental activity, including advertising and operating, must cease immediately at this address. So I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination that yours said the same thing. So all advertising must cease. And you're still advertising to this day that you're appearing before us. It's kind of a tough spot to put us in.
Yeah, so it's up, and I guess, yes, it is being advertised, but no one can rent it out, again, because the dates are blocked off, which is what I thought that I was in compliance to do. So again, that was my error.
So despite the fact that it says very plainly on the letter you received not to advertise, that was another error, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Mr. Singh, you said that you had called.
Yes, because again, I mean, this is, the first month I'm doing this, right? So I was, clueless. I didn't, know how this was going to go. I was sent a video in terms of, how, kind of the process was. But again, I didn't know what to expect. And I didn't know, again.
No, I'm sorry, let me clarify. You called the office asking or inquiring about your permit being canceled. And someone from this office supposedly told you that to block off time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. At least that was my understanding from the conversation that we had.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'd like to invite the gentlemen that are here in opposition to this case to come forward.
Mr. Sanders, you'll back out. You'll have 8 minutes to rebut things.
Okay, so I can take my seat?
Yes, you should.
Okay.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
What is they're limited to 5 minutes total or 5 minutes apiece?
No, it's 10 total.
10 total, very good. So we're going to run the clock together, so feel free to split up your time as you see fit. But as you get started, please share with us your names and your addresses.
Sure.
Very good. Thank you.
These are maps of the specific area we'll be talking about and all of the properties that are rentable in just the block that we're on.
Okay, very good.
Can you please introduce yourselves?
My name is Jonathan Simpson. I'm a resident at 523A Weekly Avenue.
My name is Dominic DeFrucio. I'm 525A Weekly Avenue.
So we are here to voice our opposition to the permitting of this short-term rental. I live 100 feet from the rental. It's on the corner of Weekly Avenue and Fern Avenue.
Is this the I'm so sorry to interrupt. Is this the Katy Hill area?
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Yes.
Thank you.
He is basically the same. He's 2 houses down from me, so basically about 100 feet from the unit as well. I think it's pretty clear from what we just heard that this unit should not be issued a permit for obvious reasons of violation of the STR laws. And here, when the applicant said that he was renting it without a permit, we just thought he was having big parties on the weekend, but apparently it was Airbnb rents that he was earning. So take that for what it is. But just to give you kind of an idea of our area that we live in, there are between the World Baptist Center and Katy Avenue. We live on Weekly, which is right on the corner where this unit is located. Currently, there are 11 Airbnbs that are, or I should say, not only permitted but operating. So I'm going to give you all the addresses for these.
I just handed it to him.
Great.
Yeah.
516, 518, 520, 522, 532, 534, 536, 538, 540, 542, and 523B Weekly Avenue. All of those are permitted and operational short-term rentals. Out of 30 houses in that stretch, there's 11 that are currently non-owner occupied operational short-term rentals. We do not want to add another to the mix because we live in a Motel 6 with all of the units around us. Actually, it's worse than that because there's more people in our neighborhood on the weekends than there would be at a Motel 6. If you could max capacity on all of these units, there would be 78 people staying in this area, and I will let you know that most of them do max out at capacity every weekend. Actually, some of them go above capacity, and the city has done nothing to limit that or to give people any kind of
Relief in general.
Yeah, they haven't done anything about it. So that's one issue that we have. We do not want another short-term rental. We definitely do not see a need for it in our neighborhood. And the fact that the applicant hasn't even come to the neighbors, at least with us, he hasn't, and said, hey, I'm looking at renting this again, or I'm looking at, what is your opinion? We haven't heard from him. And we live 2 houses down from the unit. We are definitely in opposition of this rental.
Yeah, and it's not a specific, like we're attacking the individual. It's just the general ignorance of permit holders and how they rent out their properties. They're not there. So on the weekends, we are flooded with people who come in from Thursday to Sunday who come onto our property, try to enter our homes, come into our cars, throw trash scattered throughout our neighborhood, are reckless toward individuals because they are intoxicated. They approach us. We feel that we can't go outside of our homes on certain times because of the amount of people and parties that are going on just in this small area. The parties that go on until 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning on the rooftops. We're just asking for a bit of relief. We've called Airbnb. We call the city. We call the police. We do everything. Over COVID, we had COVID parties that were 50 plus in that individual's house, to name just one, but multiple throughout the neighborhood that are in proximity. Some of these were so bad that they flooded into the streets where fights, a shooting happened 5 houses down from rental properties that had close to 60 individuals in one house at a time in the middle of COVID. A shooting in the middle of the street. It took the police almost 30 minutes to get there, 20 plus minutes for the police to get there, while we called before the shooting actually happened. So when we come here today, that is just a small list. I can go into the Bluetooth connections at 2 o'clock in the morning that are coming into our homes. My wife is pregnant. His wife is pregnant. We have no relief. So why we're here today is just to express a need and desire for some help from the city in any way possible to relinquish some of these. We know we can't necessarily go back and get rid of the ones that are already there, but to stop the flood of into the Katy Hill area, we're begging.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say here is the applicant mentioned that his unit is not currently rentable on Airbnb. Well, I can show you that it is, because I can go right here and reserve a night in November and pay for it. No, sorry, you don't get to talk right now.
And it's just
so
like
you guys want me to bring this up, I can show you, but you guys get it. So,
and that's just one case. We are littered with these cases, and we battle them. I mean, just between us, the property has been illegally rented for months at this point because it is attached to his home, and it's an unoccupied rental. They've rented it through the entire time that we begged the city for it to stop, and we get no help. So that's why we're here today. And again, it's not specifically against this individual. We have no specific beef against him. It's just relief in general to our neighborhood for help.
Can I ask a point of clarification?
Yeah. Can we close the public hearing, right? Isn't it the end of the public hearing if we begin asking questions?
No, we just stopped the clock.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was hoping for. Okay. I'm sorry, that's what I meant. Stop the clock.
I understand the frustrations that you're voicing about the saturation of Airbnbs in this particular area. But I want to clarify with you, I feel like I'm just not clear between things that both of you have said. Have you seen any particular violations with Mr. Singh's Airbnb over the last few months that his permit has been lapsed?
Just last weekend, there was whatever was going on there. I mean, it took up the whole neighborhood. I can give you pictures right here on my phone of the...
Actually, sir, you can email those in.
Yeah, we have. We don't get responses. I mean, that's where we're kind of at.
So does that mean you are using the Metro Hub or the...
Yes, we do. Yeah, we're involved. Yeah. We work directly. I can't remember his name off the top. Robert Osborne.
So do you have those things documented with you that we could see?
We don't have in our packet, I would think, with all of these complaints, with the calls to the police do not necessarily make their way into these packets. I understand that. Okay. I know that from personal experience. So, but I would think with all of these complaints and your contact with Mr. Osborne, that these kinds of things would have been considered a documented complaint.
The thing
But
is,
it
we
may have
didn't-
been general.
Here's the thing, there were some rentals at his property that we didn't even know were rentals.
Okay,
Because
understood.
of how inconsistent he has been renting it.
Okay.
And so we're not sitting online checking the freaking, Airbnb listing every day. Sorry to be blunt, but we're not doing that.
I
We
mean,
have
we're already
jobs
here,
and things.
in
Right,
the
but if
middle
you're
of the
saying,
day
if
to do
you're, hold
this.
on just a second, if you're saying that all these things are things you're experiencing and they're adversely impacting your ability to peacefully enjoy your property, I would think that there would be,
There is documentation for sure.
Hold on just a second. There's some inconsistency between your statement that you're experiencing all these things, but at the same time, you're not watching closely. Do you understand? Do you understand how that doesn't quite line up?
No, we're watching, but we're not looking at, oh, he's got it listed right now.
Yeah, we're not
but
sure.
today he doesn't have it listed.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not checking Airbnb every single day.
Yeah, we're not checking Airbnb.
Okay,
every day.
let's everybody talk one person at a time so that we
Can
can
I
be
say-
respectful of each other and that way we can understand what each other's questions are.
Sure.
I just have two things I want to say. You asked us, what have we seen that violates laws with this particular case? My question to you is, what have you seen that has violated laws? He's been renting the unit without a permit. Is that not enough to say this is somebody who violates short-term rental laws? What are the ramifications on that? Secondly, he says that he lives at the unit, which may or may not be true, but on his Airbnb listing, he's renting it as a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bathroom home. Well, there's only 3 bedrooms in the entire home. So where does he live when he has tenants that come to the property? Is he staying on the roof? I mean,
By ordinance, he's not required to be present when these things, when these events occur. The council doesn't require the owner to be present.
There's a lot of confusion about the title owner-occupied versus non-owner-occupied. Those who are non-owner-occupied tend to vacate when they rent. So that's kind of, I understand the point you're trying to make, but I think it's not particularly valid. And it turns out that it was a non-owner-occupied permit anyway. I think what these gentlemen are trying to impress upon us is whether or not we think it's particularly egregious that Mr. Sane rented after his permit expired. This is an opportunity for this street to ask for some help. And it's not all on Mr. Sane's shoulders, but they're quite saturated. And there aren't a lot of options being given to people who actually live and exist in these communities. Some of the only things you can count on are if the Airbnb operator or the short-term rental operator happens to drop the ball. And then you have to say, okay, well, perhaps we can get this one closed down at least temporarily. So I get your point, which is there was a shooting in the street, that's not Mr. Sane's fault. Or there are wild parties with 50 or 60 people, it might not have been at his house. Your point is it's too much for one community to handle.
And there's
My concern with that is I feel it exceeds the jurisdiction of this board to address whether or not there is oversaturation of short-term rentals in the neighborhood. What we can address is whether or not it is appropriate to shorten or adopt a customary discipline for whatever his violations have been. And what I was hoping to hear from our opposition folks was that there are particular things that have happened at this unit that make it necessary for the board to impose stricter discipline than we might otherwise. And so that's what led to my question about, have there been HUD complaints? Have there been other documents that you can furnish to us that would give us something to consider? Because I'm not hearing that so far. I'm hearing general complaints, which are very valid, but I'm not hearing evidence that is germane to the case we're considering right now. And I think that's the issue that I'm having.
Which also goes to my question of, I hear what you're saying about the neighborhood as a whole, but tell me specifically related to Mr. Sane's property, what has occurred?
Last weekend we called the police on the party that was going on. That's the amount that I can give you in terms of the specific.
At Mr. Sane's house.
Yes, yeah, that's it. And again, I feel we're getting to a point where we're discouraged in the neighborhood because, look, we understand where we live in East Nashville, and if it's a party, look, the police aren't coming. We understand that at a fast pace. There's other things going on. We understand that. And that's why we just are looking for some sort of help, because it doesn't matter if we go to Airbnb, the city of Nashville, doesn't matter. They just kind of push us aside, and we have to deal with it every weekend from Thursday to Sunday, and that's not if they're not rented out during the week as well. So.
Understood. Very good. Anyone have any additional questions? And you do have more time on the clock if there's anything else you want to share with us.
I will say that there definitely were, I know there was 2 incidents in November, I believe it was, where there was large parties at this property. And I cannot confirm that that was an Airbnb or if it was just the applicant having something there, but that was definitely something that was an issue where there was I know I counted just on the balcony 15 people, which if it was an Airbnb party, then that's obviously a violation of occupancy limits.
Very good. Gentlemen, we really appreciate your time and coming down here today, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Sane, there's some time left on your clock if you wish to offer a rebuttal.
Yes, I absolutely do. So the activity that they were speaking of was not via a short-term rental at all. It was because I have, gatherings and sets and parties at my house, because my house was specifically built for that. So it wasn't in relation to any kind of Airbnb or any kind of short-term rental at all. So it was, things that I was having. I had no idea until today that, they felt this way. I've not received any kind of opposition from them specifically. So I had no idea that there was even, any kind of issue. Again, I don't want to be penalized for, the short-term rentals that's in our neighborhood as a whole. If it's my property, I have the prerogative to do what I want to do with it within reason. If I want to have 15 people over, 20 people over, then that is I think that is my right to do so. I don't think that is any kind of violation of any kind of Airbnb or short-term rental, because again, it wasn't rented. I've only rented it twice since I was on. I've only had 2 rentals, via Airbnb since my license had expired.
Do you recall, specifically, are you saying that the party that they witnessed last weekend was a party that you personally hosted for your friends?
I had a party, yes, for my friends. It was a birthday party, yes.
In November, do you recall hosting any parties at your house in November?
I can't remember. I may have, but
You're
I don't.
concerned about
I don't.
COVID and having people in your house.
Yeah, I don't think. I can't remember. Recall if I did or not. I have had smaller, gatherings of people who have been tested for COVID during that time. But I can't remember that I had a party in November. No.
Anyone else have any questions? Mr. Sane, have you shared with us everything that you wanted to?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Well, let's consider the public hearing closed, and we will debate amongst the board members.
I mean, there are very clearly 3 violations.
Very clearly.
Still having the advertisement up, I think, is pretty major considering the all caps warning in the letter.
Yeah.
Obviously, having a stay, particularly a stay in March before you even file the permit renewal paperwork, when you have renewed the permit twice since it has been,
I think 3 times.
well,
Is it?
renewed
No,
twice.
you're right.
and extended
You're right.
the 3rd time.
Yeah, okay.
And it's not someone who's unfamiliar with the process. I understand thinking, well, I don't think I'm going to rent it. It's COVID. I'm probably going to save on the rental fee, or on the renewal fee, you know, and then, okay, well, I'm going to start renting it again, so I need to get my permit again. I understand that. Renting it before you have the permit, before you even potentially get sent the paperwork in. From the opposition perspective, I mean, this is a huge amount of Airbnbs in that space. I agree with your sentiment, however, Mr. Bond, that unfortunately I do think that is outside of our jurisdiction to regulate the saturation within a particular area of the city. I can empathize as well with what Mr. Singh said, that he shouldn't be penalized for the fact that there are numerous permits in that area. You know, aside from the opposition perspective, for me, the bigger issues are you've got these 3 violations.
Right. The only issues for me are the 3 violations, so they're the only ones that are established and admitted.
Correct.
Well, so we have, you know, we have an experience.
Advertising.
Yeah. An ongoing advertising.
Right.
To this very day. You know, this is an experienced Airbnb operator. 2016 was, I think, the first year that permits were made available. And it strikes me as this was, yes, okay, fine, it was COVID. I wasn't going to rent the place. But then the decision was made to rent before the decision was made to renew. I have tremendous sympathy for the gentleman that appeared in opposition. And I can tell you from experience, their position is that they need to not get Mr. Sane blamed for everything that happens on Katy Hill, but take advantage of the opportunities to cull some of the behavior or to reduce some of the behavior when an opportunity arises. And an opportunity arises when someone fails to renew their permit and then violates that. So I don't think that we should fail to give Mr. Sane relief because people are in opposition.
Correct, I agree.
But I do understand completely their position that they're calling the police, they're calling the city, they're getting no help on any front. They see one opportunity and they say, let's at least get this one for the neighborhood.
Right. And unfortunately, I just don't think we're not in the position to create test cases.
Sure.
Or create or make examples of one person, you know, as a deterrent to the entire neighborhood.
But we also didn't need to offer Mr. Sane any relief from his one-year waiting period.
The 3 violations to me
The
are...
3 violations seem it seems excessive, and it seems sort of a conscious disregard of the law in my opinion. So yeah, that's kind of where I am as well. However, one thing I will say I'm concerned about is the gentleman that appeared did say that they made outreach to the city to register complaints, yet we don't have any mention of those in the packet. So I'm wondering, is that an oversight, or is that an oversight in this case on the city's part, or were they just sort of unsophisticated as to how they were going about registering complaints, and they weren't actually putting them in a repository?
Do we need to,
Okay.
do we need to reopen the public hearing?
Do I need to reopen the public hearing to confer with the city?
Let's do.
Let's do? Okay. Consider the public hearing reopened?
Yes, I can speak to that. There are numerous complaints for the street, but there are no complaints in either the host compliance hotline or in the hub for this gentleman's address.
Gotcha.
But there are numerous complaints for the area.
Gotcha.
For the area in general. Could I ask, are all of the complaints specified for a certain property, or is it more of a general, someone's got to do something about this?
There were several that are for specific addresses, all up and down Fern Avenue and in the surrounding area. But there was just simply, generally when they are called in, particularly to the hotline, they are asked for a specific address.
Okay.
If it's entered on the hub by a Metro government employee, in other words, someone's called or emailed, then the request for the specific address in question is made, and then specific address is added to the complaint. but there are a few general complaints. They're pretty rare. They're generally for a specific address.
Understood. And then can I ask one last point of clarification? My understanding from previous experience was that when you call the police, even if you're identifying a particular home, there's no way to link that to host compliance or whatever we're calling it these days. So and odds are if it's a party, the cops aren't going to show up. If the police don't show up, there's never a connection made between a call being made about a certain property and the information that's provided us here.
There's varying degrees. If a police report is generated and it's not an ongoing investigation, and we have an indication that the police report was generated or that the police did actually come to the property, we request a report. It's not an ongoing investigation. We generally get that report. But I can tell you, in general, from my experience, and this is true of any property, not specific to short-term rentals, they will go to the party and they will ask them to break it up. If they seem to comply, then they generally will not file a report. If they're called back to the scene, then generally there's a report filed at that time. Now, that's not specific to short-term rental property. That's to any property in Nashville, Metro Davidson County.
But you'd have to have word that it was regarding a short-term rental for that connection to get made. Perhaps the complaining party may follow up.
In general, either a hub complaint or a hotline complaint will say the police were called.
Perfect. That's exactly what we need to know. Okay, great. Okay, super. Anyone else have any additional questions?
Was it, you just need to close the public hearing?
Yep. Okay, with that, we're going to close the public hearing, and I move in this one case that I don't see a clear path to offer Mr. Sain any relief on the one-year waiting period. And I think the one-year waiting period ought to begin from the April date that the codes received the permit application, and I based that largely on the fact that those stays were recorded in the 2 months prior. Do I have a second?
So we can base it off of the last violation?
We can.
Okay. Then I second the motion.
April 28th.
It would be, do we have a particular date? We only have April of 2021.
28th.
The 28th? Very good. So,
When the appeal was filed, we don't know the documented stay, and I would proffer them, I would say April 1.
okay, April 1. So I move that the one-year period begins April 1 of 2021. Do I have a second? All right, shall we vote? All those in favor? Aye, and raise your hand. Oh, okay. 4 in favor, the ayes have it, and the vote carries. So, Mr. Sain, beginning April 1 of 2021 is your one-year waiting period starting date, so you'll be free to reapply April 1st of 2022. Thanks for your time today. Okay, with that, I believe we've concluded the business of the day. Okay, and the meeting is adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.